Buenos nachos, and welcome back to the Bartender Hideout. As you could have told, maybe by my introduction, we got to the number 5 on the list of Drinks International most popular cocktail list of 2020, 2021. And that's gonna be the Margarita. Hence my greeting in Spanish. So yeah, we're gonna be taking a look at the number 5 on the list. If you wanna read along with the list and wanna know which is gonna be the next episode, just make sure to check out the description below, since there will be the link to the list in full. As I said, we're going to be looking at the history like normal, just a short little bit of history. Then we're going to be making the drink, and finally I'm going to be tasting it myself and also be showing you what we're going to be doing the rest of the other weeks. So let's dive into the history first. Looking at the history for the Margarita, this is actually the one when I was doing my research, I found out there's a million stories about who made this drink. Okay, maybe not a million, but there's a lot. We ended up finding a lot of stories between the 1935, 36, and 1950s. That's where the bulk of the stories come from. So I'm going to be just addressing 1 or 2 or 3 of these stories. So the Margarita, first off, it probably comes, or part of it comes from maybe the daisy drinks, as they were called back in the day. So the Spanish translation of a daisy is Margarita. So that's one theory. There used to be a drink that, or maybe it's still around, that was called the brandy daisy, and they basically had the same ingredients as a Margarita do today. The only thing is that they swapped out the brandy for a tequila, and that to me sounds very viable as an origin story, but possibly there might be some other things to it as well. Back in 1937, there was this book called Café Royal, and it was a cocktail book where there was a recipe in there which was called the picador. And if you looked at all the measurements and basically the way this cocktail was made up, it was exactly the same exact measurements as well as the Margarita that we know nowadays. So in that way, it could be that the picador from 1937 is the Margarita that we know now. But since no one really claimed it as being their own drink, I think maybe it was a little bit harder back in that day. So then there's another origin story from Texas, from Galveston, which was a little city in America. Back in 1948, there was this place called the Balinese Room, and a bartender there made supposedly the Margarita for this girl who had her middle name was Margaret, so that kind of translated into the Spanish Margarita. That's also one of the origin stories. But yeah, again, there is so many at this point that I didn't have a clue of where it actually came from, so I'm letting that as it is with a couple of these stories at least. Then if we look at the 1950s, that's where the period where, as well as with the daiquiri from one of the previous videos, the frozen Margarita came into place. This is when electricity was more booming, and that's when they started using the frozen daiquiri or the frozen Margaritas as well. Just added ice to a blender, makes it a little bit more tropical. So in the hotter regions of the world, it was actually pretty nice to drink that Margarita, have like your little boozy treat, and also have it be nice and cold. From there on, there was actually in between 1970 and 1971, there was this guy who ended up inventing the frozen Margarita machine. He ended up converting a soft serve machine to a drink basically like you see now at 7-Eleven, like one of those slush machines. So he kind of converted that a little bit to make sure that he could serve his frozen margaritas. And obviously at that time, that was a really important thing because it just made life a lot easier, since blenders apparently weren't that consistent as well in making those frozen daiquiris, frozen margaritas. So yeah, this was a perfect way to make sure that there was consistency, which is always key when it comes to cocktails. And then one last thing is that back in the 1970s as well, the margarita actually surpassed the martini as most popular drink in America. I think still to this day, the margarita is the most popular drink in America. I'm sure you guys must be wondering, yeah, but tell me how we actually make the drink. So let's dive into that one. Okay, so let's get into making this cocktail. We are gonna need a glass, obviously. This has been sitting in the fridge, so it's nice and cold already. Then what we're gonna be doing with the margarita is giving it a nice salt rim. This has been like this pretty much from the start, and it just adds that little bit of extra goodness to the cocktails, also the flavor. I normally tend to do about half a rim, just so people can kind of check what they want. If they don't want the salt, then they don't have the salt, and otherwise, if they they can just make a decision based on that, because obviously salt is not for everyone, but in a margarita I think it kind of should be. Okay, then we're gonna get into making the rest. So as I said before already, we're gonna be using a tequila. In this case, I'm gonna be using a Jose Cuervo, and we'll be adding 60 mils or 2 ounces to our shaker tin. Then I will be using a Cointreau, or actually a triple sec is just fine as well. Cointreau is just the most well known of that, at least in these regions here. And I will be adding about 3/4 of an ounce or 20 mils to our shaker tin. And then I got my freshly squeezed lime juice that we're going to be using. And I will also be using about 3/4 of an ounce or 20 mils of the lime juice. And then that's all for the ingredients. So let's just get into shaking the cocktail. Add some ice to the shaker. And then give it a little tap so it doesn't come off halfway through the shake. And there we go. Give it a good and nice and hard shake. Make sure that all those ingredients work together again. And then let's double strain it into the glass, since we don't really want those little chips of ice in there either. There we go, that's all done. And then lastly, I like to garnish it with a dehydrated lime. Obviously it could be like a normal lime wheel, a lime wedge. This is all normal garnishes that can be used for a margarita. So yeah, there you have it. That's our margarita. Let's get into tasting. Firstly, I think without the salt, I think it's just missing a little bit. So I'm gonna just try that again, but then with the salt. Yeah, I think this is, for me personally, just the way it should be drank. I think the saltiness on the rim just adds a little bit of extra feeling to it. The tequila it just works nice, since it's not as harsh when you have a little bit of the lime, a little bit of the orange liqueur coming through, or the triple sec. It just makes it, again, a pretty well-rounded cocktails, which is probably something I'm going to be saying all throughout this series, because there is a reason why all these cocktails are on this list. They just tend to be a lot of very well-balanced cocktails, and yeah, this is no exception. So, like, kind of rounding down the top 5, that's like, this is as I said, this is a very good drink. And it's the first one based with tequila, I think, which is also a new one. Yeah, but besides that, I think that's all for the margarita. If you enjoyed this video, if you like what we are doing, make sure to leave a comment, like and subscribe, and make sure to tune in next week for a new video. If you want to know what is going to be the next video, make sure to check out the list in the description to just know what's coming up. And for now, I'll see you guys next week. Adios.